time spent and return on investment. The most profitable way to generate business as an agent, most profitable, highest ROI is your database, number one, because nothing beats that, guys. Like, come on, like nothing beats calling up everyone you know and getting a few deals from that. I did that. That's how I started my business. My first 100 transactions, I'm pretty sure 95 of my first 100 transactions were me calling people that I knew from my old job at Microsoft, from people that I knew in the community, from my alumni association, from like, if I would have gone to church, I would have called people that I go to church with, just getting deals from that. And that got me 20 to 30 deals a year, like clockwork. What was my investment? My time, right? If you don't have any deals, your time's not worth a lot, right? So it's a pretty effective way to generate business, number one. Number two is what we talked about last week. Check out Power Hour from last week. That is pounding the phone. Like grabbing the phone and reaching out to potential sellers, high intent, right? Everything from Expired to FSBO, Absentee Owner, Circle Prospect. I mean, Circle Prospect, not much intent, but you're reaching out to potential home sellers, right? Potential home sellers. It goes from like high motivation, high identification to Circle Prospect, calling the phone book and finding people who might want to sell, okay? So that's really what that's about. So that's the second most profitable. I would call that the second most profitable way to generate business, generate some sellers, right? And if we look at sellers, I would say that's same numbers still apply. That database, outbound prospecting, trying to find sellers that want to sell. And then I would say the third one, right? Third one is online leads, okay? You're generating online leads, trying to find sellers. I think that's probably the third one, right? But there's some huge, there's pros and cons to all three, because I know some agents roll their eyes when I say database. Oh my God, calling everyone I know. I don't want to be that guy. Facts are facts. The most profitable way to generate business, bar none, right? That's why they teach it to you the first day when you join basically any brokerage, right? So that, or when you join any coaching program, they go like, have you called your database yet? Let's do that first, because they want you to make money, right? So that's number one. Outbound prospecting is number two. A lot of agents don't like calling their database, or they tapped it out. They feel like this maxed it out. They want more. Okay, great. Cold calling. A lot of agents don't want to do cold calling. Oh my God, that's too difficult, too challenging. Let me find a way to generate inbound leads, right? That's why it's so attractive. There's a mental shift that happens when you're making the outbound call, someone that's not expecting it, to getting the lead, generating it from online and calling them, even though they might not actually be expecting it. That's another topic, right? So maybe it's not that different. But you're reaching out to them. That's way easier for so many agents. It's way easier. It's night and day. That's why the inbound lead is so attractive. And also another one, Roberto, you know this, much more scalable as well, okay? Because I cannot flip a switch and double the size of my database in a year. Very hard to do. And you're probably gonna fill it with people you have a very weak link with versus people you have a very strong link with because you've known them for so many years. You add a bunch of people you met yesterday, it's not the same. You can't just double the size and effectiveness of that database. It's very challenging to do. Double the amount of cold calling you do. I mean, you can, maybe you can add an ISA. That, I mean, it's harder to do because it's limited on your time and the time of your ISA, right? And the training of that ISA and feedback for that ISA. It doesn't scale that well. Scales better than database, but not as well as online leads, okay? Online. And I'm talking about the platforms, Google, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, organic, all these things, right? So this can be a great way to generate potential sellers, okay? But there's some challenges, Roberto, okay? This is not like, let me put out my seller ad and get a bunch of seller leads, right? If it were that easy, seller leads would be the predominant kind of ad we would see online. It would be the number one type of ad we'd see day in and day out, right? That's not the case. And if you look at the Facebook ads library, if people don't know what that is, Google it, Facebook ads library. Look at the kinds of ads out there, right?
Don't share the secrets. Don't share the secrets.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, check it out. You can see ads on there all the time. When you're browsing Facebook. Yes, there are some types of seller-focused ads, and you'll see them because they talk about giving you the value of your home. Do you want to know the value of your home? Do you think of selling now? They might be offering you like a lead magnet, tips to sell your home. There's always people trying to find people potentially selling their home, right? Or mostly 90%, I'd say. Would you like to know the value of your home right now? Would you like to know the value? Okay. So that's typically what a seller focused ad looks like with some variations. That's essentially it. What could a person who wants to sell their home want to know? Oh, they want to know the value of their home so they can sell it, right? Well, that basically the problem with that kind of ad is that anyone that owns a home wants to know the value of their home. I have never met a homeowner that went through the whole process, getting a mortgage, buying the property, their blood, sweat, and tears put into their house, they're paying that mortgage every year, every month for years and years. I've never met one that wasn't curious about the value of their home because the market's up, because the market's down, because the market's flat. It doesn't matter actually. Like, oh, let me just click on the button and I want to know the value of my home. So you already know what I'm getting at, right? There's a lot of noise and false positives in that kind of an ad because it's just the nature of it, right? That's just the nature of it. Like any ad, let me just say that, like any ad. The challenge with that kind of an ad is to actually, when you get down to it, you can generate leads to these ads. But when you get down to it, finding potential sellers, it's a very small subset of the people you generate. And those leads tend to be very expensive and they tend to convert way less, okay? And that's on like the Facebook side of this platform. There's also Google PPC. I would like to know that how much is my home worth? How much is my home worth right now? Okay, that's another, like you can bid on those keywords. Everyone and their mom has been bidding on these keywords, especially since post-pandemic world. Holy cow. We saw the cost per click of these keywords. How much is my home worth? How do I sell my home? You know, all these things just skyrocket over the last 3 years. The cost per click has just gone up and up and up on home valuation and everything that a potential seller might want to know and do. It's getting bid up and up and up. Again, all these things work. I'm not saying they don't work. It's just the cost has gotten out of control and the conversion rates are as low as ever, right? And I happen to know a lot about this, Roberto, because we've handled Facebook leads at Power ISA for years and years and years. One specific project, we did over 250,000 Facebook leads that we called, follow up with, set about 20,000 appointments from those leads, and and generated hundreds of transactions, right, from those leads. And the thing that we found, and we saw all kinds of ads there, all kinds of ads, single property, homes list, foreclosure list, distressed properties, home valuation, a lot of home valuation kind of ads. And what we saw was very consistent. It was the most expensive lead to generate and the hardest to convert into a follow-up, an appointment, or even a qualified lead. It was the lowest conversion rate, highest cost to acquire, right? Which just, again, doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means you better have some big pockets to put in there because it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of leads, a lot of effort to convert these leads, right? I think there's a better way. All of this to say, all this preamble is to tell you, I think there's a better way to do this. And there's always been two sides of this argument. How do you generate sellers online, right? How do you generate sellers online? Oh, think like a seller. How much is my home worth? With all the problems I just mentioned. That's one field of thought. The other field of thought, the other school of thought, was that, what are you talking about, right? The web is good at one thing, and that is showing people pictures of beautiful homes. That is the thing the internet innovated on. I'm talking about 20 years ago, right? This is not something new. Putting homes on the web is not something super innovative. Been around for a couple decades at this point, right? Map-based search has been around for what, 15 years now? So, I mean, this is not something new. People really like seeing homes, right? People really like seeing homes. And that is another behavior that correlates to a buyer, of course, but also a potential seller. Right? Because every single seller is a buyer, right? And maybe there's a minute, exceptions to that. Maybe, potentially, right? People moving into the nursing home, maybe, right? You can argue they're buying a place in that too. And maybe some investors that just want to cash out and sit on their cash, I guess. I don't know, right? So there might be some minor exceptions there. Every single seller, almost every single seller is a buyer. Not every buyer is a seller. Agreed, understood. But every single seller is a buyer. And folks, think about the psychology of these leads. No one gets up in the morning and say, I really want to sell this house. Let's see what we can get for it. Well, how much is my home worth? Oh, great, I'll sell it. That just doesn't happen. That's not a real consumer expectation. The person gets up in the morning and says, this house is too big, this house is too small, this house doesn't have any room, I'm having to have some kids, I'm going to move to a new place, I'm going to relocate, I want to get closer to the office, I want to get further away from the office. That's what they really do, okay? That is a real consumer behavior, which is why the ads and the funnels and the lead magnets focused on giving people what they want, which are homes, perform so much better. They perform so much better in engagement, in conversion. The cost per lead is much, much lower, much lower, but the conversion rate is not as low as these more seller I'm not gonna call them seller, home valuation focused ads. Home valuation focused ads. When you're talking about the two, I will go with the home buyer focused ad always when you're talking about the two, right? Whether you want to generate buyers or sellers, doesn't matter to me, right? Because it's just better at generating people that want to do something in real estate. Way better. It's way better. And on the Google pay-per-click side, same thing. People that are buying focused are still a better bet at becoming potential sellers as well, right? Instead of how much is my home worth, kind of a keyword. Home is for sale in this area. It's a much better keyword. It's a much better keyword. It's not going to be as crazy. It's still it can be pricey. It's not going to be as crazy expensive as the home for sale. How much is my home worth? And it can be very direct. And it can be very targeted to a neighborhood, a school district, an area, a region, whatever it is, right? So you have more options there. You have more options there. Because how much is my home worth in, Redmond, Washington? I mean, that's a kind of a weird search term, right? It's like, how much is my home worth? That's the more generic one. That's why it's so expensive, okay? So those are the big differences. There's some big differences, okay? And we've been talking about this a long time. And this debate has been going on for years in the real estate marketing space. The home valuation focused approach or the home buyer focused approach, right? I don't want to say they've been like that's not religious, right? But there's two sides to that coin. What is the best way to generate a potential seller lead? Okay. So we decided, okay, this debate has been going on for years, right? There's always going to be some good cases on both ends. Let's run an experiment. Okay. There's one thing what we see in the headlines, what some of the gurus say, and I've been talking to some of the gurus about this, right? There's people that swear by these home valuation ads, but a lot of marketers won't run them. They refuse to because it's so challenging to make successful, not because they can't get clients for them. Oh my God, Roberto, you start a marketing agency today and you're only focused on finding people sellers, you'll get clients, 100%, right?
But you just want to get the sellers.
Yeah, they just want to get the sellers. Just want to get the sellers. If you kind of walk them through the full picture, some of them will drop off. It's just way harder. It takes a much larger investment, but you'll get clients, right? Because people want to generate sellers. Some marketers refuse to run the seller ads. They just won't, because you're like, hey, I'm in it for the long haul. And if you're not in it for the long haul, it's not even entertain that, right? I'm going to give you the thing that can give you results faster with less investment, which you're more likely to actually do, which is the buyer focused ad, more of a buyer focused. Okay. And the web, I'm not smart enough to tell you why, Roberto. The web is just better at that, at serving you content around the destination, not the 18 things you need to do to get to the destination. Selling your home is something you do to get to the destination. It's not the goal, right? And also, here's another thing, very obvious thing. It might not be obvious to everyone. The consumer's a lot savvier in 2023 than they were 5 years ago. They know what you want from that home valuation ad. They know exactly what you're trying to do, right? You call them on the phone, hey, how's it go? They know exactly what you want, right? So that's a big difference. And if the outcome is not vacation focused, selling them on the vacation, it just gets harder to get them to give you what you want, right? To become a qualified seller lead. They don't want to. They don't see any reason to. Oh, yeah, if you don't answer these 18 questions, I won't give you the value of your home. Well, then I'll just go on Zillow and get the value of my home. What's the big deal, right? So again, the consumer's more savvy. That's why I think all this contributes. So we decided, let's put this to the test, okay? We launched ads on, I think it was like a dozen different markets, right? I say less than a dozen, but it was like markets in the Western US, Central US, Eastern US, and Eastern and Western Canada as well, okay? We ran ads, and these were quote unquote buyer-focused ads, serving people homes, single property homes, lists of homes, carousels of homes. It was homes, selling them on the destination, not the process. And we ran these across all the US and Canada. But as part of the funnel of the process they did to become a lead, they had to answer some questions, simple ones, not like an 18-question questionnaire. But one of the questions was not if they had a home to sell. Don't ask it that way, because they're, again, savvy consumer. They know what you want, right? It was, do you currently own or rent a home? That was one of the questions we asked as part of the funnel. Do you currently own or do you rent a home? And the default was none of those, right? Like, no, we didn't leave it on by default. You had to answer something, right? You had to give us some information. So we did that, and we generated over 700 leads across the US and Canada. There was a large sample size, and a large diverse geographic area, okay? It was LA County, Ventura County. It was Regina up in Ontario. It was South Florida. It was North Florida. It was Georgia. It was North Carolina. It was like a good swath of the US and Canada, a good chunk. Calgary, I think, as well. So a good chunk of these different cities. And the results were very consistent. On average, we found that these ads generated 51% of the leads that were generated indicated self-reporting that they owned a home, that they didn't rent. 51%. 51% of those leads said, yeah, I don't rent, I own a home. And they want information about these other homes. Give me some information, right? That's a starting point. I'm not saying there's 51% listing appointments ready to go, right? That's not what I'm saying. But you've got a chance, okay? And the approach with these leads is not about how do you list their home. They're not asking you for that. That's not what they asked for, right? They're asking about the destination. And if you add value on the destination and getting them there and giving them options, a lot of concern, right? Inventory is low, historically low from where we were, in May 2023. In June, we'll see numbers in June in a couple weeks, but I'm not sure it's going to be much different, right? I don't see an explosion of inventory going on everywhere. I'm not seeing it, but we'll see, right? But a lot of people are concerned they'll be homeless. They don't have anywhere to go if they sell their home. So consult with them on that. But base it off the destination, the vacation, the next thing. But these ads, these buyer-focused ads, can generate a lot of potential sellers, buyer sellers, two-ended transactions. And who doesn't want that, right? So I really want to change this. And Roberto, when we gave these leads to a real estate agent, I was like, oh yeah, a bunch of buyer leads. Okay, well, let me see. And then when we filled in this information, we didn't do it initially. We started including the information. Hey, do they own or rent? They own. It changed the behavior tremendously from the agents. It completely changed the game for a lot of them. I was like, wait, what? And they worked harder to reach out. They made more calls. They sent more text messages. They responded to text messages more because they're like, hey, this is already a valuable lead. Now it becomes in a inventory situation like we have right now, it becomes an incredibly valuable. All of these leads were generated within the last 60 days, okay? So it is a low inventory situation already, okay? And the cost per lead, on average, cost per lead on Facebook is going to be like between $5 to $6 US. That's like an average across all these different markets that I mentioned. Some of them are going to be twice that, some of them are going to be half that. $5 to $6 is a good average. The cost for a seller lead would be double that, right? Because it takes 2 buyer leads to generate 1 seller lead, if it's about 50%. So $10 to $12 for these leads, potential buyer seller leads, okay? That is going to beat everything up. You cannot generate a lead, a seller home valuation lead for less than triple that on Google. I can give you an example, right? Like $30, I think would be the minimum. $20 to $30, I think is the minimum you're going to be generating some of these leads. And when you talk about actual qualified leads, it goes even higher than that. But just on the front end, the cost per acquisition is double or triple, right? So that's where the math really gets impressive and gets interesting, right? So that's it, Roberto. That's what I got. I thought that was a really interesting experiment we had. And for me, it just convinced me more of a belief I already had. I was in one of those camps. I was in the, buyers can be the best sellers kind of camp. But again, I wasn't sure about it. I had my beliefs. I'd seen it playing out in my view. But this, for me, convinced me even more. That hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. If anything, it's gotten more intense. And as I grabbed these results and showed them to other professional marketers, some of them said, this is close. It might be a little bit high for what they've seen average. Probably average is going to be about 40%. It might be a little bit high, but that's in line with what they've said, what they've seen. They're saying it's 30 to 40% minimum. And in some markets, it can be as high as 60% of leads that are inquiring are homeowners. Okay. Can be up to 60% in some markets. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. That kind of blew my mind. It was a much higher than I expected. I expected 20 to 30% average across the whole country, right? And in some markets, it could be high, but not everywhere. And it was high almost everywhere. It was high. I think the lowest one was like 20%, 30%. The lowest market where we saw people self-report this information, okay? They provided it themselves. So I thought that was really interesting. And I am now more firmly in the camp. I am more firmly in the camp with data in hand, right? That the best way to generate a potential seller is to generate a bunch of buyers and be judicious and use all the information at your disposal to find the ones that are hungry to sell. And here's a big and, be a resource to them. They're nervous about this. They're concerned about this, okay? The renter doesn't have anything to sell. They just want to buy it to it. I mean, there are situations where it's much easier. I mean, they've got some background, right? But in a way, it's much easier. They just have to buy. There's one transaction for them. That's it, right? Then maybe they have to break their lease. That's it. That's the big concern they've got. Like 1 month's mortgage or 2 months mortgage, and they're done with that. But the seller has a much bigger problem, guys. They got to put their home on the market. And a lot of these markets are going to get multiple offers, going to sell in a day or 2 or 3. But they got to turn around and be on the buying side, right? They're going to go, oh no, now I got to face whatever happened to me. I got to face it on the other end, and I like that. So be a resource. And Roberto, I think next week, there's a topic for next week. We should talk about how to address that problem. What if I become homeless? I don't want to say in a mocking way, because it's a real concern. It's a real concern. It's a real consumer issue. How do I avoid the homelessness problem? This is a real fear, right? This is a real thing. We'll talk about it next week. Kind of the back and forth and give how to effectively handle that objection and how to be like the advisor, right? I think one of the folks in my group, Michael Wisniewski, he calls himself the life transition specialist, right? He's like, hey, all these guys are just realtors. I'm a life transition specialist. He's so good at what he does. He's like, I don't just buy and sell homes. I help people like change their lives, because that's usually what a new home does, right? You're moving to a new area, new city, new town, new life, basically, right? So life transition, I like that. How do you become a life transition specialist for these clients? Because that's what they need right now, right? Very challenging market for sellers right now that want to buy, which all sellers do. Challenging for them. It's not easy. And if you're out there providing the right value and tackling that question head on, don't ignore it. Like dive into it deep. And if they don't bring it up, you should bring it up, right? Because it's real. They're concerned about it. They're nervous about it. Okay. So my recommendation is go right after it, and we'll talk about that next week.
Nice. And just a quick plug for Housester. We are taking 10 agents over the course of about 4 or 5 weeks, where we're going to show you exactly how to lead gen for buyers and sellers.
Love it.
How to convert them into what we do, our process to get referrals out. We're going to show you exactly how to do that. So if you're interested, comment beta, and we'll take you in. We'll provide you more information about that. But yeah, Gustavo, thank you so much for stopping by today. We'll talk a little bit more about this next week. I wrote it down, and then we'll talk a little bit more about coffee.
Yeah, definitely, man. Coffee's another one. I'm just getting in. I'm dipping my toe in the whole coffee movement, but it's been fun.
I'll send you a couple of pictures of my setup. You'll see what I.
Nice. All right, man.
All right, man. Thank you. Have a good one.